Hello, welcome to this MoodleMoot session on 5 innovative use cases of the database activity. I'm Sarah Ashley. I'm an e-learning project specialist with Munami Learning Solutions. So in this presentation, I want to share with you the different ways that you can use the database activity. It comes out of Moodle Core. It is not a plugin that you install onto your system. It's right out of the box when you install Moodle. It is I like to think of it in terms of very versatile, and it's like Play-Doh or plasticine or clay or any of these modeling compounds, right? You can, whatever you visualize that you want to use it for, you can mold it into that shape. It is, that's how pliable this activity is. If you're more of a Lego person, think of it as you've got all kinds of different bricks that you can build into so many different types of projects. It can be academic. It is a multi-purpose tool in that it can be used for academic work, and by that I mean something that's graded, gradable work, feedback that you can give to students or to the learner. It can be something that is non-graded, and so I call it non-academic, something more generic, or even think of it like in corporate use or business use, or it can be something that's in a group-based activity. It can be individual, private, one-on-one work with the students or with the learner. It is portable in that you can package it up. What you create in the database can be packaged up and shared across the same Moodle site for other teachers to use in their courses, or you can put it into a different Moodle site, give it to someone to use on a different Moodle site altogether. So it's shareable. And it is adaptable. So whatever you share at the end of the day, the person can take that template and use it as is, but can also adapt it to their own purposes. They can change some of the fields, they can add different images, change the names and titles of labels, and adapt it to what they need it to be, or extend it. They can use it just the way you give it to them, or they can add more to it and take it a little further. Okay, so a very, very awesome tool. So I'm going to share 5 different ways that it's being used, and I hope that this is insightful and inspiring to you. So use case number 1 is as a course development tracker. So in the description portion here, this is the description part of the activity. We've used the generical filter to create tabs. It could have been accordion, whatever you want, or just the plain um, text editor as it was. But we have 2 things we provide to the faculty. They have an instruction section that shows them how to use the tool. And then there's another section that has a list of YouTube playlists that correspond to every step of the training process that they go through for how to develop a course. And so this database is a collection of the different courses that are being built. Each professor, when they come in, they see only their courses that have been assigned to them or that they are building. They add an entry that represents a course, and then they fill in the form to indicate which step of the development process they are in. So in a list view, when the Office of Online Education team comes on to see where are we with course development, which courses are ready to be marketed, which courses are ready to be put out there on the website for students to register for and enroll. We can see which school. We have the instructor's name, which is redacted for you right now, but we can see the school that the course belongs to and the level, as in, is it associate, is it bachelor, is it graduate course, course number, and then the title of the course links to the actual entry. We can see which certificates it's a part of. So if we are marketing certificates, we can say, okay, the Bachelor Marketplace Ministry Certificate program is ready. This course is going to be done soon, and then we can market that, right? The date that the entry was added by the professor, the date that they last modified it. So if there's a long gap between the last modified, we can kind of reach out and say, hey, it's been a while since you touched this. Is everything okay? Right? So it's a way to monitor and provide assistance where assistance is needed. And if it's still being built, it's in progress. And once it's completed, then the status tag changes to completed. The action section here shows different things you can do with each entry. They can view the entry. They can edit the entry. And then for us as admins or as a teacher within the course, you have the approval button. So that means I can click approve, and then this now becomes public and other people can see it. If it's not approved, only the professor can see this entry. Only the person who's the course builder is the one who can see this course. So let's take a look at what it looks like as a single entry. So when you look at an entry, it is pretty much a web page kind of, and we have a completion status that shows the number. It's a computed field here. This is JavaScript that's adding up as they fill in each step of course development. It totals up, and once they complete, everything is done. It goes to 100%. So let's take a look here. Let's go in. So this is what it looks like when they add an entry or are editing an entry. It is a form that has basic form elements. So you have drop-down menus here. It's a drop-down menu where they select the school that this belongs to. You have radio buttons, you have text boxes. This is a multi-choice selection list, so they can select the certificate or certificates programs that this course belongs to. And then in terms of the course development process, each row corresponds to a step in course development. So this is the pre-check step, the course develop the data completion step, the MCFs in Moodle step, the week 1 lesson step, and all that. So as they move through their building process, they come into the database activity and they click the little check boxes to indicate that this is complete, this is done. And for each check mark, it tallies that completion status number, percentage, and we can see how things are going along. These show me links are actually a link to a YouTube video. That's a YouTube playlist of videos that shows them how to complete this particular step. Sometimes it's just one video, sometimes it's multiple videos because they're learning how to enter this part and how to do their objectives and how to use Bloom's taxonomy and whatnot. And so this is all kind of a training guide as well as a tracking tool. All right. Use case number 2. We have a post-first discussion board. What is a post-first discussion board, you may be asking? Well, in academic circles, we have something called a blind post, where the student has to post a response before seeing what others posted. So it kind of encourages original thought in a situation where maybe the topic for discussion may possibly generate similar answers, similar experiences across the student body there. And so we want them to post their response before they are influenced by the class, what the rest of the class has posted. So the database activity can be used for that. Why not use a forum, you say? Well, the Q&A forum does not actually do thread by thread post first. Okay, it doesn't do like the whole discussion board. It does a thread by thread. So it doesn't usually serve the purpose that people need. So in this case, the way you set it up, you have to require an entry before they can view participant entries. And this is a message that shows up out of Moodle. I didn't write that because I indicated here that this is the entries required before viewing. So the key for setting all these things up is in the database settings. Okay, when you add an activity, you have the page where you fill in the title of the activity, put in description, and then you have certain settings and configurations. That's where you control how all these are set up. So the key for this one is the entries required before viewing. Okay. Another use case is that it's being used as a private Dropbox. So you can set up a private Dropbox for one student and the professor, or one student and the advisor, or facilitator, moderator, counselor. Okay, and information is exchanged privately between the two. So what you do is you set up the course in separate groups, and you make sure that the student is one person, that student in his or her private group, and the advisor is the only other person in that group with them. And the student uploads journals and documents and any other information that you need to collect in the database activity, and the advisor can then review that material and give feedback. And so it becomes a private submission system Okay. There was a medical school that had students doing clinical rotations, and they needed to submit journals for each rotation that they completed. They had 10 separate assignment activity links on their course page, and each had to have be put into a particular grouping, and it was very messy and all over the place. Not a very neat way to see whether the student has completed all the requirements for all rotations in one place. But by creating a database activity, 10 links were reduced to one. Very neat and tidy on the course page, and very efficient in terms of managing. You can also set up a RSS feed. You can include in the settings of the database an RSS feed, enable that so that the advisor can be notified when their student, uploads or creates a submission in the database. So again, here is the list of entries by one student. So because it's in separate groups, you'll have that little drop-down menu that you can select the student you want to look at, and they're in a group by themselves. So you can see all of their rotation documents. Here are the ambulatory documents, medicine, and the pediatric rotation. You can see medicine is lacking. It probably needs 2 or 3 more documents to be submitted. They need to submit 2 early cases and a journal. And in the case of the pediatric, they also need an EBM. So it's very clear and easy to see what has been collected or what has been submitted and what is missing. All right, and the documents are right there for them to download. In an entry in a single view, so I can now take a look at one particular entry, and you can see you can have multiple documents that are collected. It's all up to you and what information you want to collect. And so you just set up your submission form to have the fields you need, and they fill them in. And down here, you can't quite see that, but this is add comment over here. So you can actually encourage discussion of this particular entry right here on this page. So it becomes a discussion um, around an entry and becomes more of an engaging learning process here. So what does it look like when the student is adding their entry? It's a simple form, very familiar elements. Again, you have drop downs, you have a browse file picker, you have a text box that they can fill in. Very simple, very easy, very familiar. Okay, nothing complicated. All right. Another use case is as a course resource repository. And in this particular use case, there was a need for having a content management workflow. Medical school, again, a particular foundations course taught all the different body systems, cardiovascular system, nervous system, digestive system, and all of that. So in one course, they had multiple teachers. And so instead of giving everybody teacher access and having everybody uploading all their documents willy-nilly and sometimes canceling each other out, be like, where did this document come from? I didn't need that. And then delete. It was a nightmare. So instead, they have one course manager with access to edit the course, and everyone else is just like a non-editing teacher. They can add submissions to the database of all their documents and files and texts and articles that they want the students to be able to study within their section or their lesson plan week. And then the content manager will review that, and if it's okay, will approve it. It gets published. Remember the approval thumbs up. When they click it, then it becomes visible to the students. So then it's like a library of documents and course files that they need for their learning. If a review needs to be done, they update the document, they put in the next version, course manager reviews it, okay, great, this is good, and then publishes it. At the end of the course, at the end of the term or semester, they archive this whole thing, and you have a record of rich, content that can be reused in another course or can be put for research. Okay, can be made searchable, just searchable, no more entries added, but a searchable resource, a library of content. What does that look like? So in this particular instance, the information that they wanted to collect was a lecture period, the instructor for that period, the document, or documents. If there's a website that's associated, and then you can see the date added, and then you have the approval system here. So these do not have the approval checkmark, which means these are approved and public. So when a student comes to this database activity, they will be able to see 1, 2, and 8, these 3 items. They will not be able to see this one because it has not yet been approved. And this is the indication that once that is clicked, then it becomes published and approved. Okay. This is a single view, so you can see there is more information in the single view. So you can determine that, okay, just at an overall glance in the list view, what, from a bird's eye view, what do they just need to see? Okay. And then in the single view, they have all the details of everything. All right. So the lecture period, the document, descriptions, web link, and more details are also present here. And from this screen, from this particular view as well, you can have the approval system. So the course manager can see the details of everything and say, okay, this is not a resource that is good for this level. This might be good for the advanced class, or something like that. So they can see in detail what's being done here and approve right from the screen. Okay. Use case number 5. So we had a Moodle team that was actually the Moodle help desk, and they would take calls for Moodle issues. And so they use the database activity as a support call log, okay, a ticketing system. And so here you see, again, this is where we're filling in things. You can see that there's a drop down for escalation. If necessary, they pick that, and the date of the call, the time of the call, AM, PM, the person who called, the contact information, their roles, the faculty persons, the staff. Is it university hospital staff, or is it a student? Is it a continuing education student? So they had different roles, and then what department, if necessary, right? So then they fill in the support issue. This is checkboxes. So it was a Moodle issue, and this was responders in Moodle, or it was iSpring in Moodle, or something like that. Okay, so they can fill in all this. And this is what it looks like as an entry being viewed. We have HTML and CSS coloring things to make it more prominent and easy to see. This was escalated to me, and so then I go in, I deal with the issue, and then I respond and put in the resolution and close the ticket. And because we also have the add comments feature, I can make it a learning opportunity for the staff, for the help desk team. So maybe I can put in instructions of when you get a case like this, go and look here, and then if that's not the situation, go there and do that. You can, make it a learning tool in addition to just a tracker. And we can run reports on this and see, how many calls came in that were from faculty, how many came from staff, how many were issues about the lockdown browser, how much, so you can actually report on this, and it becomes a very insightful tool for triaging tickets and fixing popular issues, and then maybe creating an FAQ based on the frequency of tickets. So there you are. So let me just quickly kind of talk about creating this. So you add a database activity. It's add an activity or resource. You select database as a tool, and then you put in the name, right? And then you put in the instructions in the description box. And then everything that I have described here comes from these settings. Okay, so the entries, for instance, allows you to select whether you want approval or not. If you say yes, then it also provides you the option of allowing editing of an approved entry. Why would you want to do that? Well, if after the entry has been approved, sometimes websites change and pages move, and links sometimes don't work after a year. So you might want to go into the entry and then change a link that no longer works. And so you want to probably allow editing of entries. Do you want to allow comments so that there's discussion? Do you want to require entries before viewing? Do you have a maximum number of entries? Or do you want to just allow them to post and post and post as much as they can? There's that. There's availability settings where you can turn on, you can open submissions, and you can close submissions. Think of the MoodleMoot and proposals for presentations being opened and then closed on a certain date. It's because the date for submissions is closed. at a certain date, and so then nothing new can be added. Okay, so you can control all that and so on. So the secret is in the settings. Okay, when you're adding entries, consider when you want to open and close entries. When you want students to be able to view entries, you want to consider the dates when entries can be viewed, when entries can no longer be viewed, and this is going to be archived. Do you want to require a certain number of entries before being able to view? That this page is a snapshot of all the different settings, right? Encourage discussion. You can do ratings, okay? If you need to give feedback or grades, actual points and scores, or do you want to use a vote up, vote down system? Number of pluses to vote a topic up, or down. And then what is public, what is visible, is using the approval system there. After you've created your settings and you save, you're not done yet. You now have to decide what information you want to collect. And this is done by setting fields. Okay, so if you recall in the clinical rotations, we had a rotation type, we had the student submission, the document type. So you have to decide what information you want to collect. So think of it like you're creating a custom form within your course, and it collects information based on what you want to be collected. And so here you create a new field, and these are your options of different fields that you can add to your database. All right, so decide what you want to collect, and then you need to decide what it should look like. And so for that, you've been provided with templates. So there's a template for when you're adding or editing an entry. There's a template for what it should look like when you're viewing an entry. There's a template for what it should look like as a list. You have a header, a row with the headings of the columns. You have a row for the repeated entries, and you have a footer. Okay, and then you also have a template for what it should look like when you're searching. So you have control over how things should look like. So feel free to make things pretty. It's an HTML editor, so add color, make things bold, insert images, break up rows of tables with other things, and you have total control. I love it. In the list view, I have to put this in that it's recommended that you disable the HTML editor when you are editing here, because sometimes things go a little out of whack. So you do need some HTML skills to work very well with a list template. There'll be a button in the bottom left corner here that says disable editor, and that removes the editing toolbar, as you can see, and gives you just a plain text box for working in. And so here in the header area, this is your column titles for the table. All right. And then in the repeated entry, you're looking at one row of an entry. What information do you want at a high level? Okay, just the author of the post, the document title, and when it was submitted. That's all you want. In the details, you can have all the other stuff that goes into the weeds. Okay, so you decide what should be visible. Okay, and put that in. And you have these template variable fields that you can just make use of. It gathers everything here when you create your fields, and you can say, okay, I want this. It's not drag and drop, but you just click. You put your cursor where you want the field to go, and you click on it, and then it inserts it into the template for you. Portability. So once the course is done at the end of the term and you want to archive, you can archive your entries by exporting them to a CSV file. Okay, so you can export all the content, but take note that when you use the export feature, any files that were uploaded, like documents and images that were uploaded, do not come into the CSV file. For that, you would need to do a course backup. And if you only want to back up only the database activity, you can do that. Go to the backup, and then when you have all those lists of your activities in the different weeks and topics, check everything and only check off the database activity with user data. And then you'll have everything preserved, and you can download that and save it. Okay, so you can back it up. And then if you want to give it to somebody else to use, you can make another backup that is, without user data, and give it to them. But for even sharing as a zip file, it's easier if you go to the preset tab, and then you click export, and then it just creates a zip file for you of your entire database. all the tables, all the views, all bundled nicely. You can give that zip file to somebody else and they put it on their Moodle site. And you can also save it as a preset. When you do a preset, it puts it on the same site. It makes it an option. You see this radio button here? It makes it an option within the site, with the whole Moodle site. So another professor can use it in their course. So if you save it as a preset, what happens is when they come to use a preset, they can use this option and pick the database activity they want to use. And then they get the same fields and everything. Then they can go in and adapt it as they need. If you receive a zip file, like you will be getting in the discussion board, in the discussion thread for this presentation, there'll be presets for all these use cases that I've shared. There'll be zip files. You will use this feature to import them into your course. Create a database activity, put in a name, set up your settings, save it, and then when it says there's no information in this database, go to the presets tab and then choose to import a zip file and then upload the file that you'll be receiving here. Okay. And this is, in a nutshell, as quickly as I could, the database activity in Moodle Core. If you have questions, ideas, thoughts, please let's continue our discussion in the discussion board in the technology room, and my contact information is there too. You can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you out with figuring out how to set up the database, and then download the presets and the presentation at the discussion. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.